I go Dharma for refuge. I go to the Sangha for refuge. For a second time, I go to the Buddha for refuge. For a second time, I go to the Dharma for refuge. For a second time, I go to the Sangha for refuge. For a third time, I go to the Buddha for refuge. For a third time, I go to the Dharma for refuge. For a third time, I go to the Sangha for refuge. I undertake the training to refrain from harming living beings. I undertake the training to refrain from taking that which is not given. I undertake the training to refrain from harsh and false speech. I undertake the training to refrain from sexual misconduct. I undertake the training to refrain from intoxicating drinks and drugs which cloud the mind and lead to carelessness. With virtue, true happiness is gained. With virtue, real wealth is achieved. With virtue, nibbana is attained. Therefore, let your virtue be purified.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Right. The next item is the reading of minutes. I will do so. Minutes of the meeting of the servants of the Buddha held on 15th November 2025 at 4:30 p.m. through Zoom. The topic was, are we true practitioners of the Buddha Dhamma? The speaker was Venerable Hinbunne Konnanya Mahathero, founder abbot of the Staten Island Buddhist Vihara in New York. The meeting was chaired by the president. Commencing with the observance of Saranagamana and Panchasila, the Venerable proceeded to deliver the talk, The Importance of Practicing the Dhamma in Daily Life and Meticulously Self-Examining One's Thoughts, Words, and Deeds to ensure its compliance with the Dhamma was emphasized. Saying this question was posed because it's easy for the practical application of the Dhamma to be missing at times in many lives. Since our minds get polluted constantly, we need to monitor our own minds while forgiving ourselves for transgressions and exerting effort to improve. Being a Buddhist is a journey. It was narrated how an old lady said she cannot be a Buddhist because she takes a glass of wine every evening. When she was advised to start with one precept that she could observe and then proceed to the others, by being mindful in daily life, she has eventually become a devout follower. A Buddha statue is an embodiment of the 10 qualities that perfected and should make one reflect on these perfections and virtues of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. On seeing a statue, recollecting one's own good qualities in terms of Silanussati and Chaganussati are ways to progress. Meditation in daily life is a good habit and helps in the practice of compassion and generosity, making one's home and workplace a peaceful environment. The practice of the Dhamma is an exercise in internal reflection and development. It's important to let go of one's ego and not compare oneself with others. It is through such practice that we become peaceful and joyous and influence others to be peaceful and happy, and finally be able to break the cycle of samsara. After a brief discussion, the meeting terminated with offering of merit to all beings. Could somebody please quickly second the minutes if you were there last time?
I will second. Sriya.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you. Let us then get on to the business of the day. I'm extremely happy, and we are also fortunate that we have with us today Bhikkhuni Venerable Santacari, who speaks to us from Adelaide, which is where she is a resident Bhikkhuni She's been in robes for 15 years. I will say no more because I think when she speaks, the rest will become all very evident. Over to you, Bhikkhuni.
Well, thank you for inviting me to speak, and I hope it's beneficial to those who hear this talk. One question, is this talk being uploaded onto your YouTube channel later?
If it is all right by you, we would.
Oh, sure, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to know. Okay, then. Well, I will just begin with another brief homage to the Blessed One. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. You know, that picture you can see on your screen is actually the photograph of my higher ordination when I became a Bhikkhuni in Australia. That is in New South Wales, in the big cave at Santacari Forest Monastery. Here's another shot of that really lovely cave Buddha carved by Samaneri Patachara. Whilst Bhante Sujato Bhikkhu Mahatero, not Terry, was the abbot there. So tonight I'd like to talk about developing joy on the spiritual path and specifically with respect to being on the Noble Eightfold path taught by the Blessed One. Now, when I use the word joy here, I'm being a little general and actually using it as a broader term meaning joy, rapture, bliss, tranquility, gladness, and happiness, and all other types of sobhana ceitasikas, you know, like all the beautiful states of mind, all the uplifting, you know, all the different ways to be happy. Because happiness isn't just like tofu bland, right? Happiness is rich and delicious and really enjoyable and pleasurable. And this is the kind of life that the Blessed One wants for us. Now, the kinds of words that the Blessed One himself used were pamoja, piti, pamuda, pasadi, somanasa, and sukha. Joy, rapture, bliss, tranquility, gladness, and happiness. So I'm specifically tonight beginning with finding joy and happiness in the suttas. And the suttas are the Buddhist scriptures, which are the words of the Buddha himself. He taught for 45 years and had thousands and thousands of disciples, and those words were remembered meticulously. And this is a picture here on the left from a Sri Lankan possibly cave painting, and I suspect it's depicting the Mahavamsa, is my guess, but certainly it is a group of Sri Lankan monks inspecting what looked like palm leaf manuscripts. So this was one of the ways that the words of the Buddha were preserved. Now, joy and happiness is absolutely all through the scriptures. But tonight I am going to look at this list of different teachings. Right at the bottom there, you've got the Bojjhanga chapter of the Samyutta Nikaya. So you've got actually an entire chapter on the Bojjhangas, which certainly developing joy, rapture, and tranquility are a central portion of the Bojjhangas, but I will mostly be focusing on these teachings of joy that I would, in terms of the Noble Eightfold Path, I'd kind of put them in Samawayama territory, if you were kind of looking at it within that frame. But let's continue on. So first of all, I'm going to look at exhortation. That is, a lot of people seem a bit afraid of pleasure and a bit not understanding the role of wholesome pleasure in the spiritual path. And so someone's got, yeah. And so I particularly wanted to look at where the Buddha gives an exhortation, as in, you should do this. You should actually develop happiness, people. Get happy. Do it now. And he is quite direct like that. And the first one I want to talk about is his advice to Rahula, his very own blood son. So this is what he says to Rahula. So if you know that the act with body, speech, or mind that you have done actually doesn't lead to hurting yourself or hurting others or hurting both, it's skillful with happiness as its outcome and result. Can you see here? If you do acts with body, speech, and mind, they are skillful and they have happiness as a result, as an outcome, as a natural cause and effect outcome. Then, Rahula, given that you act with body, speech, and mind that doesn't hurt yourself, doesn't hurt others, doesn't hurt both, then you should live in rapture and joy because of this. If you are a good, virtuous person, then you should allow yourself to be happy. You should give yourself permission. You shouldn't be afraid of it. And in the next one, where he is talking to, who's he talking to here? In the simile of the quail, he says specifically that pleasure should be cultivated and developed, but not just any kind of pleasure, specific, particular types of spiritual pleasure that are beneficial to us. And these are the pleasures of renunciation, the pleasures of seclusion, the pleasure of peace, and the pleasure of awakening. These are the kinds of pleasures that don't hurt you, don't hurt others, and don't hurt either of you. They don't hurt anybody. These kinds of pleasures are really helpful and beneficial. And I'll go into them more later. And you can see in the Pali, those of you who know Pali, I'm underlining sukham there, the word sukha. To be really clear, sukha means happiness. The Buddha's really definitely saying, sukha is also used to mean pleasure, right? When we talk about sukha vedana, that is pleasant feeling, right? The feeling of pleasure, sukha vedana. So here we've got nekama sukham, the pleasure of renunciation. Viveka sukham, the pleasure of seclusion, the pleasure of being on your own. There's such a lot of pleasure in that, you know. There's a big difference between solitude and loneliness, isn't there? You can be lonely in a crowd. So you can clearly see that if you're like afraid of pleasure, if you're afraid of rapture and joy, then you're not following the Buddha's instructions. He's telling us that not only should we not be afraid, that it should be developed and cultivated. And here, when he's talking to a deity, Saka, king of the gods, has come down to talk to the Buddha, and he poses a very long list of questions to the Buddha. And in his answers, the Buddha begins his reply with saying, Lord of the gods, because that's who Saka is, there are two kinds of happiness. And one of them you should cultivate, and one of them you should not cultivate. And you should know that a happiness, when you cultivate the one kind of happiness, unskillful qualities grow as a result, and existing skillful qualities decline. And if that is the result, then that is not the kind of happiness that you should cultivate. Whereas you should know of a type of happiness that when you cultivate this kind of happiness, unskillful qualities decline and skillful qualities grow. And you should cultivate that kind of happiness. And notice here, the Buddha doesn't say, don't do that specific thing and do this specific thing, because two people can do the same thing, but because of the way they're framing it in their mind, can have completely different ethical results. And what do you mean? What do I mean by that? So, two people doing the same thing. Okay, so two people choosing to develop their faith in their particular religion, and one person, because of their faith, their style of faith, the way they frame faith, that person becomes really judgmental, really accusatory, and says harsh, harmful things to people who they judge to be not aligned with their religion, and may even go so far as to grow angry with people who disagree with them, and may even commit violence. In that case, that person's belief in their religion has caused unskillful qualities of anger, intolerance, discontent, and judgmentalism to grow, and skillful qualities of compassion, tolerance, kindness to decline. And so that's the kind of faith you should not develop, right? Whereas another person might, because of their faith, promote peace in their own heart, promote peace in their relationships with other people. They might, as a result of their faith, be generous and giving and helpful and make a contribution to society. Now, that kind of faith-based action is also pleasurable to engage in. Both things are really pleasurable and give a person a feeling of righteous pleasure. But one of them's beneficial and one of them's really harmful. And yet, if he said, be religious, which kind of religious? Or don't be religious. But there's a kind of religious that's really beneficial. You could say the same about being an atheist. There's a type of atheistic happiness, which is like, well, you know, when I die, it's all over, so I might as well drink as much alcohol as I can and take as many drugs as I can and have as much sex as I can and indulge in as many entertainments and foods as I can. Yeah. And that is an extreme indulgence in a type of pleasure and happiness. But I actually don't think it leads to long-term happiness. And it certainly doesn't lead to the growth of compassion and kindness and generosity engaging in those kinds of activities. In fact, such activities usually lead to the growth of greed, self-indulgence, and negligence as qualities. So when you're looking at what kind of pleasures, what kind of happiness, this affect and effect is really, really important to notice, to discern, to keep an eye out for. So when I say affect, I mean the affect on myself internally. If I engage in that activity, what does it do to my heart? For example, I don't watch the news. I don't watch the news, or very rarely. I might get some pop-up that the internet insists on giving me, and so, I'll see that. Or people will tell me stuff and I'll go off and watch something. But not as a general thing. Why? Because I noticed that at the end of watching the news, my heart was more frustrated than at the beginning. That I was more likely to be angry or depressed more angry or more depressed than I was at the beginning. And it was frequently the case that at the end of the watching the news, I would feel a complicated combination of angry, frustrated, and depressed. But if I didn't watch the news, I didn't really have that feeling very often, or for quite rarely. And I thought, well, is there any benefit to me watching the news? And I couldn't actually think of any. Because it's not like I take action or do anything about anything I see on the news, I don't actually race over to Palestine and go, stop killing each other. I didn't do that. I'm not going to do that because they wouldn't stop killing each other. I think they would be useless. And it might get me shot. So since I'm not going to do anything about it, why should I actually put that stuff in my eyeballs when it results in unskillful qualities growing and skillful qualities declining? Better off watch something like this, eh? So when I watch a Dharma talk or listen to a Dharma talk, then I usually feel really happy. I usually feel really interested, engaged, uplifted. Now, these are happy, skillful qualities which increase. So knowing the difference between these two kinds of happiness is really, really an important piece of wisdom. Let's have a look at the next bit. Okay, so with Jnana Sabha, the Buddha talks about 3 opportunities for happiness. And this is another really long discourse, actually. They talk about all sorts of things. Now, Janasapa is another deity, and he declares how well understood by the Buddha are the 3 opportunities for achieving happiness. So he describes 3 different ways that we have the opportunity to achieve happiness. Now, the first one is in the case and in the situation where first, take a person who lives mixed up with sensual pleasures and unskillful qualities. So like the person we were talking on the last page who likes their sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That one. The indulgence in sensual pleasures, often sexual pleasures too, and the concomitant arising of skillful pleasures. Unskillful qualities. If that person, after some time, they hear the teaching of the noble ones, and after hearing that teaching, rationally apply the mind on how that teaching applies to them. This is a really important step. You're going to actually engage with the teaching. You can't just sit there and let it kind of waft over you like a nice warm air conditioning or cool air conditioning if it's hot where you are. And then after actually rationally applying the mind on how does this teaching apply to me, then working very diligently on trying to practice in line with the teaching, living your life like that, training your mind like that, training your words like that, training your deeds like that. And we will go into more detail shortly about that. And when you apply your mind, when you hear the teachings, apply your mind, practice in line with the teaching, then you live aloof from those sensual pleasures. You don't go wallowing in it. Sure, I enjoy my dana, I enjoy my food, I enjoy my lovely cushion, my lovely soft cushion in my really beautiful and comfortable meditation room here. But that's a very different thing to wallowing around and indulging in sensual pleasures, I think. Yeah. So one attempts to live aloof, we don't have to be like sitting on a bed of nails or sitting on concrete to not be wallowing in sensual pleasures. One can be reasonably comfortable to not wallow in sensual pleasures such that unskillful qualities happen. And when we do that, when we apply the mind to the teachings, when we practice in line with the teachings, when we live in a moderately comfortable and frugal way, then that gives rise to pleasure. And more than pleasure, happiness, like the joy that's born from gladness. And here we have two different kinds of joy and gladness arising from this sequence of lifestyle choices. It's more than just one choice. It's like really engaging in this as a lifestyle. Next, so that was the I think the lobha person, the greed person, and then next takes someone whose coarse physical, verbal, and mental process have not died down. So this is the aggressive person, the angry person, the blaming person, the person who always, the fault-finding person. And of course, we are all that person at different moments in our lives. We have moments where we're fault-finding, we have moments where we're aggressive. But generally, those of us who've been on the spiritual path for a while, those kinds of really coarse behaviours and speeches really have died down. But if they haven't, then we do the same thing as before. We listen to the teaching of the noble ones, we rationally apply the mind, we practice in line with the teaching, live aloof from sensual pleasures and unskillful qualities, and this gives rise to pleasure, and more than pleasure, happiness. So that's the second way. The second opportunity for happiness is to give up the aggro side of life. First, we give up the indulgent side of life, then we give up the aggro. Actually, I think giving up the aggro first probably wouldn't hurt either. And then next, we're going to give up ignorance. And so someone who's ignorant truly does not understand what is skillful and what is unskillful. They don't understand what is blameworthy and what is blameless, what should be cultivated, what should not be cultivated, what is inferior and what is superior, and what is on the side of darkness and despair and what is on the side of brightness and joy. and they just don't know. And this is ignorance. This is moha, I think. Lopa, dosa, moha. And once again, the antidote, the remedy, the treatment plan is you hear the teaching, you apply the mind to the teaching, you practice the teaching, you live frugally and sensibly, and you become happy. More than pleasure, this gives you pleasure and more than pleasure. It is a happy life. It raises your base level of happiness, like the joy that's born from gladness. And here, once again, now who's the blessed one talking to here? I have to move this out. With Subha. So this is one of the Brahmins. And, oops. Previous. Here, the Brahmin had been going through the Brahmanical qualities of being truthful, fervent, chaste, rehearsing the teachings a lot, and being generous. And the Buddha agrees with this Brahmin that who's the pre-Hindu Brahmanical religion, that if you are thinking to yourself, I am truthful, and that this is actually true when you're thinking this. So like you're experiencing the non-regret. So non-regret is really pleasurable. It's a type of happiness in itself. And when you have the non-regret thinking, I'm truthful, at that moment, you really can, your heart opens to find even more inspiration and meaning in the teachings. You find even more joy connected with the teachings. And for myself, it just helps me remember how the teachings support this truthfulness and this non-regret around being truthful. This having right speech and having non-regret around not having wrong speech. And so this, when you know that you are skillful, you know you're truthful, you know that you're fervent in your desire to do good and be good, you know that you're actually chaste. And for me, that means celibacy. For someone in a marriage, that means appropriate sexual relationship between husband and wife. This is chaste for a husband and wife. Some people who choose to be advanced practitioners can also choose celibacy even within a marriage, but that's quite rare. But married couples can be quite chaste when they are just faithful to each other. And if you're very generous, there's such joy arises from that skillfulness, from the recollection of that skillfulness, from knowing that you are skillful in truthfulness, in generosity, in fervence, in learning and rehearsing the scriptures, in rehearsing the positive phrases instead of the negative phrases. The Buddha proclaims that he says, and I say, he's laying down the truth here, that joy connected with the skillful is a prerequisite for the mind. If you wish to have a mind that is free of enmity and ill will. If you want to stop people hating each other, if you want people to stop hating each other, if you want to stop hating people, then you need to take joy in your skillfulness, because that joy will supplant and replace that ill will and enmity and push it out. Just like if you get some beautiful creeping flowers and they'll just push out all the weeds in your garden. you know. The weeds can't grow through them. Excuse me just a moment. And here in the Upanishad Sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, you can see that here immersion or samadhi. And as we all know, samadhi is necessary for seeing and knowing. So Sama Samadhi is the 8th path factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. And usually, and actually there's a bit here that I've cut off, which is all the transcendent stuff of liberation and freedom and things. But Samadhi has an immediate vital condition, as in you cannot have Samadhi if you do not have as a state of mind that is existing in your mind bliss. If your mind is not blissful, it is not possible to actually slip into the immersion of samadhi. It is therefore a vital condition. If you were a project manager, you would say it was on the critical path. And bliss has a vital condition, tranquility. And by the way, here bliss, the Pali in this was sukha. So samadhi has sukha as a vital condition. Sukha has passaddhi or tranquility as a vital condition. Tranquility has rapture as a vital condition. Rapture has joy as a vital condition. And here the joy is the Pali word pamoja. And I say that joy has faith or sraddha as a vital condition. And here we see the Buddha underlying the importance of faith. And here he means educated, discerning faith, not blind faith. A faith that is grounded in knowledge and grounded in the Dharma. So here again, developing sukha and piti and pamoja, these things are not like things to be afraid of, and nor are they optional extra embellishments or decorations. These aren't the frosting on the cake. These are vital ingredients to make this cake. You can't make this cake without these ingredients. Like if I don't have some kind of flour, I cannot bake a cake. I've got to have some kind of flour, some kind of liquid, some kind of flavoring, and they're all vital conditions for a cake. You can't have a flourless cake. I've heard of it. And when you look into it, they've just ground something else up and used it as flour. So just like that, you can't have dal without lentils, or some kind of legume. It's a vital ingredient. So similarly, joy and pleasure and rapture and bliss are vital ingredients on the path. These are something we actually should spend a considerable amount of our practice time developing, bringing up, experiencing, and enjoying. If you're not enjoying your practice, something's not quite right. If you don't feel like just smiling and laughing, and there's something not quite right. And I have noticed all of the really great meditating monks that I have met are just always smiling and so happy. Yeah. The ones that I can see who truly practice the Dharma as well as they can and really diligently for long hours, they're the happiest people I've ever met. You see this also in the Bojjhangas. And here we have the, just the list of Bojjhangas, which you should be aware of. I won't go into them in detail because they're a whole talk on their own. But as I understand it, there's the three causative Bojjhangas: mindfulness, investigation, and energy. And when you put those three together, you get rapture, tranquility, immersion, and equanimity. So in terms of how do we get this joy coming up? Well, one of the ways is we're instructed in the Sambhojjhanga sequence that by combining these three factors, so when we sit down on our mat, or if we're walking up and down, or even doing exercise, mindfulness, or what have you, if we set ourselves to doing bhavana, sitting, walking, standing, lying down, then we bring up mindfulness and we bring up interest so that we really investigate the Dharma as we're doing our meditation. If it's boring, we're not doing investigation of principles. And so if you're bored, investigation of principles, Dhamma Vichaya is not present. And if Dhamma Vichaya is not present, then that rapture is not going to arise. You're going to be interested. You've got to, and so you may need to change it up a bit and swap your objects around just to keep it interesting. And when you put the energy and effort in to get up and go and sit on your cushion and actually bring the mind back and put it and put it and put it and put it and like, oh yeah, bring it back, and oh, it's there, it is off there again, and bring it back. I don't know about you, but you put it and you put it and you put it, and then hang on a minute, it's over there, come back over here, and you put it and you put it, and then it's over there. Like it's off halfway around the world, but you just bring it back. And this is that factor of energy, the factor of energy to just keep placing the mind on your object of meditation happily, with interest. Well, maybe I'll find something new about it this time. Because if I knew everything about that object, I'd be an arahant, wouldn't I? And I'm not. So clearly there's something else to be found out. And if I do that, then I get that rapture, that tranquility coming up. Now, instruction. Let's look more how we do it. So here with Mahanama. So we did that, what I was talking about before with the first three Bojjhangas. Oops, I'm doing that Ajahn Brahm here and losing my row. So if we brought up mindfulness, so a noble disciple whose mind is unswerving, okay? So we're mindful, we're energetic, we're interested. So we're a noble disciple whose mind is unswerving. And at that point we find inspiration in the teaching, and then we find joy connected with the teaching. So this is teaching. But now we come to particular objects. So when we have that unswerving mind with mindfulness and energy and interest, and we apply that to recollection of the Blessed One, now typically that's iti piso. Indeed, the Blessed One is worthy and rightly self-awakened, perfect in knowledge and conduct, well gone, knower of worlds, unexcelled as a trainer for those people fit to be trained, teacher of devas and humans, he is awake and blessed. When I think of that, it makes me feel happy. Why? Because at that moment, my mind is not full of greed, hatred, and delusion, because it's full of thinking about the Blessed One. When my mind is really full of the Blessed One, it's not greedy, it's not hateful, it's not deluded. It's based on that. And then when my mind is unswerving on that recollection, joy arises. And when joy arises, pamoja, rapture, piti springs up. And when the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil. And when the body is tranquil, the mind feels bliss. And when we feel bliss, samadhi's not far. I seem to be repeating myself here. It's very clear that the Buddha repeats himself again and again and again with this same sequence. And so then in this same sutta, we go over the 6 recollections. Recollecting the triple gem, the Blessed One, the teaching, the Sangha, and I know that all of you practice that. But next time you do that itipiso and the sfakato, really engage with it and think, oh, allow the joy come up. Really bring that joy up when you reflect on the qualities of the teaching, to be seen here and now, open, inviting investigation, leading onwards to be realized by the wise for themselves. I mean, just thinking that lifts my heart. And you notice I could do the recitation in Pali, but I clearly frequently do the recitation in English because I actually really want to put that meaning around my mind and really roll the meaning around my heart so that joy will arise. And I reflect on what these qualities mean and why did he tell us this, right? These are he told us these qualities. He told us to reflect on them. These are important things, right? These qualities of the Dharma to help me know what is Dharma and what isn't Dharma. There's so many people running around today purporting to have Dharma and not Dharma, How am I supposed to know? Well, it's got to conform to Svakato, etc. Now, so you've got your ethical conduct, reflecting on sila, which we saw earlier, reflecting on generosity, which we saw earlier, and also reflecting on deities. And I actually think that reflection on deities is the meditation practice done by most other religions. Certainly, it's the type of practice. So when I was young, my parents were meditating Catholics. There is, in fact, a meditation tradition within Catholicism coming through the Jesuits, and my parents engaged in that meditation practice, and it was very heavily based on reflection of the qualities of the Christian deities, which is also threefold: the Father, the Son, and sometimes it's called the Holy Spirit, and sometimes the third one is Mary, Mother of God, which to me makes more sense anyway. So reflection on deities happens right across various different religions and has the exact same result for them as it does for us, in that they find joy and rapture in that. And they can get into some very, very deep meditative states, possibly even samadhi, through really deeply contemplating the qualities of their deities. And I have respect for that. And a person who does this is then usually able to live in balance amongst people, is able to be harmonious in social and community settings. Now, one of the things you might have noticed is that when you sit and practice, now this is in a sutta given to some bhikkhunis, you might notice that you might meditate observing ... one of those subjects, but physical tension arises and your body hurts or itches or wriggles or what have you, or you might get mental sluggishness, when you start doing this, or your mind wanders off over there, brings it back. When that happens to you, and it's not an if, unless you're really exceptional, there's very, very few people that these things don't happen to. Then the Buddha says we should direct our mind towards an inspiring subject as a basis for meditation. And we had 6 subjects in the previous sutta, and added to that, there are other subjects such as the Brahma Viharas, metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha, and also the 8 kasinas, which you can direct your mind towards as an inspiring subject. Some people find asubha as a very inspiring subject. But whatever your inspiring subject is, if you direct your mind to it with those first 3 bojjhangas, joy springs up, rapture springs up, tranquility, and we've got the same sequence again. Now, I'll come back to this in a minute. It also comes up in dependent origination, but I have not included dependent origination in this talk because I personally have not integrated contemplations on dependent origination into my practice. Everything I've discussed tonight, I've personally directly practiced with. And so that's why I can, in one way or another. And so I can say that it is true that when you do these things, certainly I experienced an increase in happiness and joy when I did these things. But that's what I haven't really tried to use dependent origination as a practice tool up to now. Probably because it always bamboozled me a bit. I'm feeling it's a little more approachable these days. But anyway. So now what I'd like to do is a little process that one of my Bhikkhuni teachers from America suggested. And this is Venerable Suvijana Bhikkhuni. And she said that she liked to use the scriptures as like a guided meditation. So firstly, I'll just quickly, and I actually like to use mindfulness and breathing, anapanasati, as a guided meditation. And very often, at 5 o'clock in the morning, when I come to sit meditation and I'm trying to stay awake, I might actually bring out my mindfulness of breathing, anapanasati sutta, and read this sequence as a guided meditation for myself. But specifically here in the later tetrads is that the Buddha tells us to train ourselves to breathe in and breathe out, experiencing rapture. So sikati means to train. Now, training ourselves implies that we didn't already know how to do it and that we have to learn how to do it. And so when I do this as a guided meditation, although the scripture says they practice like this, I'll breathe in, experiencing rapture, I add in the 3 phases that you see in the in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. And so I usually do it as I practice like this. I'll learn to breathe in, experiencing rapture. I am learning to breathe in, experiencing rapture. I'm breathing in, experiencing rapture. So those 3 stages, I will learn to do it. I am learning to do it. I can do this. Okay. So if you will Oh, yes, bear with me
Sharon.
while I pop over to my scriptures here. So excuse me, Anapanasati, and now I'll just reshare that in Zoom. Okay, share Anapanasati. Share. Okay, can you see that?
No. Shall I?
Well, that's all right. You guys can close your eyes. You might be able to see it, might not.
We can see.
Can see? Good. So well-known and popular scripture, Anapanasati. Now, in my presentation, I had Bhante Sujato's translations, his very modern translation, but my heart still loves the translations that I first heard 20-something years ago, last century, by Bhikkhu Bodhi. And so when I do it as a guided meditation, I go with Bhikkhu Bodhi. So I'd like you to sit comfortably, and I don't mind whether you have your eyes open or closed. And this is how I do mindfulness of breathing as a guided meditation. So sitting comfortably, I am sitting down. I've folded my legs and crossed them. My body is nice and straight. I'm bringing up mindfulness. I'm paying attention. I'm paying attention, and mindfully I breathe in. Mindfully I breathe out. Breathing in long, I understand. I'm breathing in long. Breathing out long, I understand. I'm breathing out long. Breathing in short, I understand. I'm breathing in short. I shall train myself thus. I will learn to breathe in, experiencing the whole body. I train thus. I am learning to breathe in, experiencing the whole body. I train thus. I shall breathe in, experiencing the whole body. I train thus. I am breathing in, experiencing the whole body. I'm training thus. I am breathing out, training the whole body. I train thus. I will learn to breathe in, tranquilizing the body. I train thus. I shall breathe in, tranquilizing the bodily formation. I train thus. I am breathing in, tranquilizing the bodily formation. I train thus. I shall breathe out, tranquilizing the bodily formations. I train thus. I am breathing out, tranquilizing the bodily formation. I train thus. I will learn to breathe in, experiencing rapture. I train thus. I shall learn to breathe out, experiencing rapture. I train thus. I shall breathe in, experiencing rapture. I train thus. I shall breathe out, experiencing rapture. I train thus. I am breathing in, experiencing rapture. I train thus. I am breathing out, experiencing rapture. I train thus. I will learn to breathe in, experiencing pleasure. I train thus. I will learn to breathe out, experiencing pleasure. I train thus. I shall breathe in, experiencing pleasure. I train thus. I shall breathe out, experiencing pleasure. I train thus. I am breathing in, experiencing pleasure. I train thus. I am breathing out, experiencing pleasure. I train thus. I shall breathe in, tranquilizing the mental formation. I train thus. I shall breathe out, tranquilizing the mental formation.
Oh.
I train thus. I am breathing in, tranquilizing the mental formation. I train thus. I shall breathe out. I am breathing out, tranquilizing the mental formation. I train thus. I will learn to breathe in, gladdening the mind. I train thus. I shall learn to breathe out, gladdening the mind. I train thus. I shall breathe in, gladdening the mind. I train thus. I shall breathe out, gladdening the mind. I train thus. I am breathing in, gladdening the mind. I am breathing out, gladdening the mind. And I think that went on for rather longer than I thought. I meant to do about 5 minutes, but I think it was closer to 15. Now, I think I had been thinking of wrapping up with a quick mention that I feel that sensual pleasures are mediated by dopamine and wholesome pleasures are mediated by serotonin. But I think I've run out of time. And so I think with that lovely meditative contemplation of the scriptures. And if you recall all the other Dharma Deshanas that you've heard where the Buddha says, recollect the scriptures as your uplifting topic. If you remember, one of the ways of gladdening the mind was reciting the scriptures. I don't think I mentioned that, but it is mentioned somewhere. And so that's one of the things we just did, reciting the scriptures as a meditative, contemplative process to gladden the mind. And I really hope that it gladdened the mind at least as much as it gladdened mine, because I feel very glad and very happy. So thank you. And I will now pass it back to Manuri to share merit.
Thank you ever so much, Bhikkhuni Santacari, for that absolutely awesome session. And who on earth says that Buddhism is pessimistic? It's all about joy and happiness from start to end, to begin that way. And whether it was a meditative contemplation or what we call the vandana or the recollections, it was all part of it. So much merit to you. I recognize the lateness of the hour. I didn't want you to, we are certainly way past that time when I had thought we would be able to release you. But many, many thanks. We have people joining in mostly from the UK, also a few from Australia and from Sri Lanka. So it's been a wonderful session. Much merit to you. And we will end transferring this merit to the departed and the devas. And we wish Venerable Aya Santacari good health, long life, healthy long life, and the energy to continue with the practice in this way and to teach the practice as you've done. Much merit. I'm sure, though it's late, I will not open for discussion unless somebody can ask a question very soon. Anybody? Neville, have you got any comments? We will then end the session with the usual stanzas, and we don't mind, Bhikkhuni, if you log off because it is so late for you. Much merit and a very pleasant good night to you. We will end with the usual stanzas.
Thank you. Yes, it's about 5 hours till I get up. So good night.
Good night. Ettavataata ammehi sampadam punya sampadam sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavataata ammehi sampadam punya sampadam sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavataata ammehi sampadam punya sampadam sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. And we'll continue to transfer merit to the devas. Akasatta cha bhummatta devanaga mahittika punyam tang anumoditva chirang rakkantu sambuddha sasanam. Akasatta cha bhummatta devanaga mahittika punyam tang anumoditva chirang rakkantu desanam. Akasatta cha bhummatta devanaga mahittika punyantang anumoditva tirang rakkantu mam paranti. And we transfer merit to the departed, our friends and relatives who are departed, and the members of the servants of the Buddha. Idammi nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idam ho nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idam ho nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo.